What's going on, team? Welcome to an episode of the Keep Going Podcast, Season 2. This is your co-host, Luke Wheat, coming out of Knoxville, Tennessee. Before the show starts, make sure to follow us on our socials, okay? Twitter, the Keep Going Pod, Insta, the KG Podcast, and YouTube at the KG Pod. Just a reminder that we are not psychiatrists and not psychologists, just a couple ex-athletes trying to make a difference and end the stigma of mental health. Thank you guys for listening, and let's get to the show.
That keep going moment.
My keep going moment.
That's my keep going moment.
Let's keep going.
Welcome, team, to the Keep Going Podcast, Athletes Shining a Light on Mental Health, episode 76 coming at you live right here. Pat, tell the people where you're at first thing.
Yeah, shout out my guy Randy in TSA. The boy got me right this morning. I'm through TSA. I'm in Greensboro, North Carolina, home of the Greensboro Grasshoppers for anyone that follows minor league baseball. But besides the point, I got Dan McCarty, the Dan McCarty, the face of my baseball world. Dan, how we doing, man?
Great, man. Even better that I'm on the pod.
Oh my goodness. Sorry for waking you up at 5 a.m., Dan. My bad.
Yeah.
It's all good. It's worth it, man. It's time to keep going, you know?
Yes, sir. What you got, Luke?
No, he's West Coast living. We appreciate Dan hopping on this morning. So anybody in our network that doesn't know you, Dan, can you just give them a little bit of background on yourself and why you thought you were a great fit for the pod this morning? We're super stoked to have you on, man.
Absolutely. Yeah, I can talk for a while, but, I'll simplify it all. PSA, I am having a cold right now, so my nose is a little congested. That's why my voice sounds like this.
Well, you look good, so it's okay. Shameless plug for the YouTube. You look great. Yeah, go ahead.
Much love. I was born with a rare bone disease called osteogenesis imperfecta. Simplify, it's called brittle bone disease. My bones are really fragile. I've broken over 300 bones in my life. With that, with my disease, it causes a lot of other complications. Lack of lung capacity, hearing, eyesight, a lot of different things like that. But because of that, right, you go through trials and tribulations just like everybody. And a lot of people think just because I have a physical condition that you also don't wrestle with, mental health as well, right? So I think that's something that, for me, people just see the physical things, right? And I think for everybody. Yeah. So I'm 21 years old. I love sports. I've always loved sports. Ever since I was a little kid, I wanted to coach baseball. That was my dream. That was my thing. And so I chased that. I chased that for a long, long time. I worked my butt off. I coached club with my dad. I went to every single camp and practice and, one-on-one training my brother had, one of my brothers. And I just was like, you know what? I'm here. I might as well learn. So I started learning and quickly realized I kind of knew something about baseball. After high school, I got an opportunity to coach college baseball at Wilmington College in Wilmington, Ohio.
D3?
Yeah, ready for the love of the game.
In the powerful OAC, Ohio Athletic Conference, one of the best Division III conferences in the country. Anyways, I was there for 3 years. Helped turn that program around. They didn't have a winning season for 17 years. I was a recruiting coordinator, assistant hitting coach, and catching coach there. So really helped turn that program around. It was an amazing journey. I loved it when it changed the world for that moment. But, during that, I grew closer to my faith. And I grew closer to God. As you can see, I got a Jesus One hat here, right? And I felt that he was calling me to the ministry. So now I'm in Henderson, Nevada. I'm getting my degree here in ministerial leadership. And right now I'm getting my certificate, which is going to be technically an associate's. And then I'm going to be transferring to SEU, which is a Southeastern University online, to get my degree in ministerial leadership. So a little bit about myself. I started, first job was at a rec center working in sports. And now, I'm in the process of, launching some projects to, as part of my ministry. And that's where I'm at.
Dan, I love it, man. I love it. I love your just authentic, organic feedback and your testimony, man. I always talk about how we met the first time. And Dan, obviously in the baseball world, you've become a pretty household name in a lot of circles. And when I got to meet you, man, I was battling something. It was either COVID or I had the flu or something. And Dan walks up to me and immediately my mood was changed. And I was like, you always have a couple guys where, like, no matter what you're feeling like, when you're at your darkest, you got someone that can come bring a light. That's really why Dan's on the pod. That's why I jumped on his pod. And that's why we're brothers and really close friends today. So, Dan, I just want to tell you, man, I'm not surprised that you flipped that program. I'm not surprised that you're having success. That's who you are. And I'm glad that our listeners get to kind of peek into your day to day today. Luke, what do you got?
Man, that the inspirational part for me is all the stuff that Dan just talked about right there is not something that everybody can do anyway. Right, despite having, I'm not even going to try and pronounce the medical term for it, but brittle bone disease, that get me in a tongue twist right there. But man, that the inspiration and the strength to push through the grind of coaching is not easy, and to do it as early at an age that you did, and to do it with your, you know, despite your circumstances, is amazing. I struggle to go coach on a Sunday and a Saturday when I'm feeling down and tired, man. So that I just want to shout out you and all the stuff you've already accomplished at such a young age, and making a career shift to the ministry. So shout out what you're doing right now, man.
I
Thank you.
agree. I agree. And Dan, I want to stay there, man. We talked about it when I talked to you a couple days back. Like, the fact that you're 20, excuse me, the fact that you're 21 years old and you're doing this stuff. I look at myself back at 21 and I'm like, these are just different. You're just doing different things, right? You're just doing different things, uncommon things in the most positive light, right? Talk about your focus moving forward at 21. What are your goals? What are your aspirations? What drives you to keep going and doing this?
Yeah, it's great. I want to unpack this a little bit. First off, I want to talk about what you mentioned about me meeting you. I really think it goes. Excuse me.
Bless you.
Bless you, my friend.
It goes back to you attract who you are, right? And I think you talk about me being a light and me being positive. When I first met Pat, it was like, man, I felt that same way. You want people in your corner that can really, get behind you, that can fire you up when you need to be fired up to, be that positive, influence in your life, right? And I can just tell, it was at ABCA, and I saw him at the booth, and dude had this big old smile and grin on, and I'm like, who is this dude? Like, let me go meet this guy. I'm rolling around in my wheelchair, just going to different booths, and right off the bat, I'm like, dude, I don't know you, but I want to know you. You know what I mean? Like, this dude's cool, bro. Like, and so we hit it off. So, that's definitely kind of how that started there. And I
Yeah.
likewise, man. And you know, so talking about, how I've kind of got where I'm at, I think when you have a condition, any condition, you get thrown in the fire in situations, right? And I believe there's two things in life you can control, and I believe that's your effort and your attitude. I think it's how hard you can try and how you respond to things. Um, and I also give a lot of credit to my dad. My dad is someone who inspires me a lot, and one of my brothers, Grant, does too. All my family does, but them in particular, they really instilled in me that you only get one life, and and what you do with that is up to you. And I always think that there would be people that would be dying to have what I have.
Yeah.
And I think when you leave that in the back of your mind and you realize that, yeah, I might have medical problems, but I also have some of the best doctors taking care of me in the world because of my parents,
Yeah.
right? So it's like there's always good in the ugly if you really look at it. And I think for me, what inspires me is that it's bigger than myself. I was listening to the pod with Dom, right? And
Yeah.
that was
Shout
an
out
electric.
Dom. What an
Shout
episode.
out to Dom.
Yeah.
That episode fired me up. It was an electric episode.
Dude, absolutely.
But what I loved about what he said is when you see something bigger than yourself, that's what inspires me. When you look out you look at it in the perspective of it's not just affecting me, it's affecting people around me. That's what inspires me. What inspires me is that I can choose every day to wake up, be a positive light, to do the best with what God gives me, because I know it's going to have a positive ripple effect on the people around me and ultimately make this place a better place for other people to live. And I am aware that there are people, and I don't mean this in a, skeptical way or a negative way, but there are people out there that have it worse, right? And I was saying this earlier in my intro, but a lot of people think when they see they go, man, you must have it really hard. That's just a physical battle. I don't know what people are going through in a mental battle. And I promise I'd take 1,000 physical battles over one serious mental battle.
Yeah,
And
I
and
have to agree.
and exactly. And so when people see me, the first thing's that physical thing. And I'm like, I'm doing great. I'm blessed. I got a family that loves me. I got a God who loves me. I have a job. I'm as healthy as I can be. I have a support system. Like, what is there to complain about, right? And I'm not saying I don't have hard days, but that's what
Yeah,
inspired.
can we stay there on the hard
Yeah.
days
Yeah.
aspect because Luke said it earlier, and we talked about it 2 days ago, Dan, about like
Hmm.
when you have tough times, when you have dark days, how do you kind of persevere? Like, what are things that you
Yeah.
do daily, weekly, monthly that propel you? Because you're not as able bodied physically, which leads to mental stuff. Talk about that.
Yeah. It's a great question. This is a journey. It takes time. I'll be, you know, 22 this year. I don't have it all figured out. Um, but it's definitely evolved. I think as I've grown with my relationship with the Lord, reading the Bible is huge for me. Going to church, having a community is huge.
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing for me, if you guys get to know me and the people that listen to this, I'm one of the most uh, extroverted people there is.
Right.
I love
Yeah.
people. I love talking to people. So what helps me on those tough days is talking to people,
Yeah.
figuring out the people that I can lean on. Talking to a guy like Pat, right? Getting to know a guy like Luke. Call these guys up and be like, "Hey, man, like today's just one of those days, bro." Like,
Yeah.
but because I know, but we mentioned this about what Pat was saying about me, and I was saying about Pat. When you have people like Pat in your life that are lights, when you're having that dark, they'll be the glimmer of light in your life when
Yeah.
you need that. So you have to surround yourself with people that are going to be able to lift you. And I think that looks different for everybody. Um, I think prayer, I think, my church community, my friends, those are definitely, and reading the Bible, are definitely ways for me to, get through the dark days. Um, and really just, understanding that this is a point in time. This is just a point in time.
Yeah.
It's gonna pass.
Yeah.
God, and this is what I've always said this last year or so, and this is something that changed my life. I know this isn't a religious podcast, but you can think about this in a non-religious way if you think about it like this. This is just pure gratitude. I
Yeah.
believe current your current season is a past prayer. And what do I mean by that? You can look at anything you're going through in this life right now in this season. It could be the hardest season of your life, but I promise you there's one thing that you are experiencing in this current season that you prayed for in a different season.
Amen. Yep.
And
I
what I
agree.
mean by that and why I think that's important is because it reminds you that God is moving, that God is been faithful before. He's been faithful now. He's been faithful in the future. And if it's not you for faith, then it means that good things have happened in the past. Good things are happening now, and they'll happen in the future. This is just a moment in time. I
Yeah.
think that's to simplify.
Yeah, they're just pillars. They're just pillars, Ben. And
Exactly.
we're looking to keep checking things off as we go. And I
Exactly.
think there'll be some pain points, there'll be some setbacks, there'll be some trials and tribulations, but I think understanding, okay, I just got to show up today and give my best for,
Amen.
your faith, your higher power, the universe, whatever you believe in. I think that's powerful to go, hey, this is just one season of life. It's why we get multiple. Luke, I know you want to touch on the community piece, I'm assuming.
No, absolutely. I was kind of talking about that with our athletes this week. We took a tough loss in the playoffs last night, region quarterfinals, and before the game though, it's a big rival. Like it's called the Dutchtown rivalry because they're literally a quarter mile down the road from us. And before the game, all we were talking about was not our system of play. It wasn't this or that X and O's, right? It was all about effort and attitude, just
Yeah.
like Dan was talking about earlier. I was like, if you can look your teammates in the face and say that you played the hardest you could for
Yep.
them,
Yep.
then we're happy. And
Amen.
yesterday after we lost, I said I wouldn't want to be coaching another team, just because of how they rallied around each other and how they played for each other. We had guys go down. We had 3 injuries in 5 minutes last night to our starters, and the subs came in. They stepped it up and they played really hard, and the level didn't drop. Right, so that's what they could control. those two,
Absolutely.
just like Dan talked about earlier, their effort during the game and their attitude during the game. And that's what I was proud about.
That's it. And I think if you start to build that community of people, your support group, your teammates, your coaches, I think there's often a misconception. I want to touch on this before we move on, that like the first person that you reach out to, or the 10th person, or the 15th, 25, whatever, not everyone's going to be your cup of tea, man. Not
Yeah,
everyone's going to be the main character in your movie.
Amen.
But the people that stick around are there for you and have similar energy, goals, and aspirations. My encouragement for the listeners today is seek it. Don't sit back and wait for it. Seek it. There's going to be pain points. There'll be a lot more love along the way, is what I'd say, for
well,
And
sure.
I want to,
that,
I'd like,
like,
go
oh,
ahead.
go ahead, Dan. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to piggyback on that. I totally agree. And I also want to encourage the listeners that it's going to evolve.
Right.
Someone that might be in your corner when you're a kid or when you're a teenager might not be in your corner, and that might be okay. They
Yeah.
might not.
Yeah,
Maybe that's not what they're meant to be in your adult life. And I think I hear this saying all the time. It's like who you surround yourself by is who you'll become, and I think some of that's just kind of what. But there's also some truth to that. And I think if you have aspirations and you're trying to get better and more positive and have whatever you're trying to chase in this life or in this season of life, you got to go out and try to look for those things and those
Right.
people, and or not those things, for those people in that
Mm-hmm.
community. And it takes time. I could go on in stories about how I prayed and for months and months about getting my community, and it took me a while to find that community because I'm a person that loves sports, loves Jesus, likes video games, loves music. There's not many people that love all of those things. Like they might have a couple of those things, but I love sports. I mean, I'm a sports nut, man. Like I
Yeah.
watch, so to be able to find that type of crew, right, took time. So don't let that, to the listeners, don't let seasons of not being able to find your tribe discourage you because
100%.
at the right time, the right tribe will come.
and
So I think that's the part I'd like to leave that.
that's
Dan, I love that, man. Go ahead, Luke.
like real quick before I got another question for you, Dan. But
Yeah.
real quick, like something that I found, like this past week, I was down in the dumps and I've been texting Pat a little bit, and like I just, looking back at it now, I was asking what other people could do for me when I really needed to be asking what could I do for other people.
Mm,
Like so be looking at what you can do for other people, and you'll
absolutely.
um, gravitate towards like minds, right?
Absolutely.
And just be looking for that. Dan, so talk to me about this, and I kind of want to pivot a little bit
Hmm.
with the brittle bone disease and coaching. I want you to shout out some of those people. We know your parents have supported you
Yeah.
so much over the last years, and I'm sure, do you have one brother? How many siblings do you
Oh,
have?
dude, I got 7.
Okay, so 7 siblings, man.
Yeah.
Talk about your family a little bit, but also talk about other people who have helped you get that coaching career that you have for 4 years
Yeah.
at Wilmington, and get those, club coach and all those camps. Talk about the
Yeah.
people who supported you a little bit.
Yeah. Absolutely. Other than my family, I mean, the biggest person is Coach Tony Vittorio. Coach Vittorio, the guy's a nut. I love him to death.
Shout him out,
Love him to
baby.
death.
You got to be the coach.
He'll say it himself. He's this Italian guy that is super passionate and love the guy. And he gave me my opportunity. And I'll give a quick little short story. When you're a kid, you guys remember like you're in elementary school. They ask you to write like who you are, and what your aspirations are,
Oh,
who
yeah.
you look up to in the career field that you want to write. Like who's that mentor that you look up to. And I would write about Tony Vittorio ever since I was in 3rd grade because I was my dad. Excuse me, my dad knew Tony Vittorio because years ago when Coach Vittorio was assistant coach at University of Kentucky. My dad is from Kentucky, lived in Kentucky, but helped. Excuse me, excuse me.
Bless
Bless you.
So helped Coach Vittorio move from Kentucky to coach in Indiana, and so my dad helped him, but they had stayed in contact for a long time, and it was one of those things where my dad loves sports too, and like Coach Vittorio was that guy that like he just kind of knew. It was exciting for my dad to know someone that got to be in college sports and got to be in those type of things. And when I was a kid, he was the person that I knew in the career field that I wanted to be in. That was successful, right? And
Right.
I wanted to coach college baseball, and I knew he was doing that at a very high level at that point. And I'm
you.
like, man, I want to be like this guy. Um, So long story short, we kept in contact. And when I was a junior in high school, he was not coaching at the time. He was retired, and he was working for a nonprofit called Friends of Jacqueline. Friends of Jacqueline, amazing nonprofit. Shout out
Yes,
to them.
yes.
If nobody knows about them, they help uh, match teams with cancer patients, and they
Mhm.
do them like into sports teams, so they can have like this community and family to
Awesome.
rally around in that sport.
Incredible.
I
Yeah.
haven't
Friends of Jacqueline, amazing. Shout out to Dennis Murphy, Jacqueline Murphy, and the rest of the Friends of Jacqueline people. But
Heck
Coach
yeah.
Florio worked for them, helped do fundraising and things. Well, this they had a golf tournament here in Las Vegas, and so he had to come out, and he was like, "Hey, can you help me do these things?" I'm like, "Sure." I said, "Well, hey, I'm coaching a club team at this point, and my brother's got a game, and he's pitching. You want to come to the games?" He's like, "Sure." So, anyways, he comes to the game. He comes to watch my brother's game, and I'm saying stuff, and he's like looking at me like, "What?" And like, "You know that?" And then he's saying stuff, and I'm like, "Well, that's what I was thinking." Well, the whole game, we're like, it's like wavelength. We're on the same wavelength,
Right.
and he looks at me in like the sixth inning. He goes, "Holy crap, Daddy, you really know baseball." And
I appreciate that.
and he looked at me like that. In that moment, I knew maybe there was something here, right? When a guy who's been coaching college baseball for 20 plus years tells somebody that they know baseball, and I know he's not a person just saying that because I'm in a wheelchair. Um,
No, it was such a support for you. Yeah, go ahead.
exactly, it was genuine. So fast forward, it was like, look, I want to start coaching again when you graduate high school, and if I have a job at this point, we want you to come coach with me. And I was like, okay. So he gave me that opportunity, and then COVID hit. I graduated high school a year and a half early. I right after high school, I moved out to Wilmington, Ohio. That was during COVID, and I did my thing there. And but the thing about it was, he said, "Look, I don't know what you're capable of. I know you know enough, but I'm gonna get you. You're gonna do stats. You're gonna be the outfield coach, but you're gonna have to grind it out because at the end of the day, I get paid by winning games and helping this build a program. That's the business and the reality of this. But I believe in you. But I'm not gonna limit you. But I'm also not gonna throw you right away. You gotta prove something to me. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
if you know me, I'm a really competitive person. So I was like, all right, that's a bet. Like let's run it. Like so by the next year and a half, I was a recruiting coordinator and all these things. So Coach Vittorio, big shout out to him. He's the biggest person that gave me a shot in that department.
Yeah, I know Luke is loving this too because we always talk about our experiences as young coaches. Coach Vittorio in this situation did so much right here.
Yeah.
He has
Absolutely.
a young coach that he didn't just say, "Hey Dan, here's the job." It was, "Dan, I believe in you. I trust your knowledge. I know it's going to grow. Now prove it." Because
Yep.
there's a big difference. He could have just gave you the pity job like a lot of these young guys get, like, "Hey, have a volunteer assistant position, like do what you want." Or he could have said, "Dan, like I don't think this is a good fit." Instead, he took a chance on a kid at that time, gave him the keys to the car and said, "Don't crash it." There's
Yep.
a
Yeah.
lot of strength in that.
Well, I mean,
Absolutely.
think about Pat. Your whole job as NCSA is helping kids get connected with colleges. You're a recruiting coordinator for a bunch of different colleges. Like that is such an important role
Right.
at a school. That makes or breaks a team. So he didn't
Yeah.
just the volunteer system. He gave you a job. You
Yeah.
know, he must
Yeah. I'm going to say this message too, Luke. I'm going to say this message as well as the airport speaker goes off. The message I'm going to say to everybody listening today is sometimes it just takes someone to believe in you.
Yes.
Amen.
And look at the career that Dan has now had in college coaching, coach of the year, got the opportunity to work with me indirectly at NCSA, got the opportunities to do all this stuff, about to be a speaker, about to be a minister, about to do a lot of awesome things because a couple people said, "Dan, here's the keys to the car."
Yeah.
I think that's really powerful. Shout out all the coaches that gave me the keys to the car. I'm sorry if I crashed it a time or two,
Yeah.
physically and literally, because
Same
I
Couple
here.
did.
couple
Yeah.
fender along the way.
Yes, but I
Yeah.
thank you to all the coaches. I could name 1,000 right now that listen to this podcast that gave us the keys to the car. Just wanted to thank you for that. Dan, I got to ask you something, man. And this is a question where we open up Mental Health Awareness Month
For
this
sure.
month in May. And I'm a man of faith. I think
Yeah.
things happen for a reason. I look at our schedule and I go, Dan's coming on for the first week of Mental Health Month. And I'm like, this is perfect.
Okay.
Tell me your keep going moment. Talk about it. Let me, Luke, and hundreds of listeners know.
Yeah. So I got 3. I thought about this because I knew this was coming.
Dan, you're not one to plan this stuff. That surprises me, obviously.
No, because I was on a podcast and it was a 3-hour episode. So if I don't plan it, I'm
Oh,
gonna talk too much. So it's like I gotta, I have to condense it, right?
fair
I
enough.
have 3. I got 3 moments. I think were keep going moments for me. One, well, I'd say 4, but the first one doesn't count because I wasn't really alive. I mean, like I was, but I wasn't. As a little kid, you go through different things. Um, because I wasn't really supposed to be alive, right? I had a 5% chance to live, and my heart rate was 12, and my oxygen was like 22 a couple times, like when I was first born. So obviously that's not mental health related, and that's not, really I had no choice. I was a little kid, I was 6, 7 months old, right? But my first keep going moment was I was 14. Um, I just had the biggest surgery of my life. I had to get my legs rotted. They put these metal or titanium rods in my legs. But they had to break my bones in 36 different places in both my legs. And it was the most pain I've ever been in my life. It was excruciating. It was grueling, mentally, physically. Um, and I struggled for a long time. Excuse me.
Bless you, my friend.
Man, man, this podcast episode is gonna be interesting with my sneezing.
Oh, you're good.
Oh, brother, you're crushing. Go ahead.
No, so I was really struggling, physically, and it turned into lack of sleep. And when you don't get sleep, then you're mental, right? When you don't take care of yourself, you're not eating right, you're sleeping terribly, it spirals, right? I started not being super kind to my parents, the ones that were taking care of me. I was in excruciating pain, and it was bad. And my mom started reading the Book of Job, and the Book of Job, is a book in the Bible, and even the Bible just wasn't at this point for being a 14-year-old kid just was not hitting right. It just was not feeling that feeling.
Yeah.
And fast forward, I started to heal up a little bit, and I surprised my mom for Mother's Day tickets to go on a cruise. We went on a cruise, and I was like trying to think. It was like the second or third night. It was a concert cruise, and I couldn't sleep. My leg was vibrating, like literally shaking, and I was still in pain. And I finally submitted it to God. I said, God, I don't know the reasoning behind this. I believed in a God my whole life, but I want to commit my life to you at this point. Like I just want to submit everything to you. I don't know why. My mental is not right. My physical, I'm not sleeping. I'm in pain. It's affecting everything. I don't want to feel like this anymore.
Yeah.
I don't want to feel like this. And I said, you know what? I need to keep going. So I submitted my life to Jesus at that point, and it wasn't butterflies and rainbows after that, but it gave me this sense of peace mentally and physically that there was something bigger out there, that there was a reason. Excuse me, that I was going through
Bless you.
this, you know, um, and that was one keep going moment for me.
Yeah,
Uh,
can I stay there for a second, Dan?
yeah,
I think that one is so important because you talk about at the end there how you finally fully committed to this. You finally said, I'm done with it. I'm submitting. I'm going all in. But I love what you said after that. It was still under construction. It still wasn't perfect. Just because
amen.
you finally committed it didn't mean it wasn't still going to be a process.
Yeah.
I
Absolutely.
think in the mental health world, I think, we talk about it, Luke, every single week. Like we think, okay, we've done all this stuff. I need to get rewarded. No, 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 no. Like that's when the journey starts. So, Luke, I don't know if you have anything on that, Luke, before he
No,
goes into
you get what you asked for, right? And Dan asked for a journey, and he asked to undertake a maybe even a tougher battle at that point.
right.
Um, but man, he's stepping up to the plate, right? He's seeing the pitch, he's getting his pitch, and he's taking it. That's that's
I
Yeah,
appreciate
man.
that. I
I
appreciate
agree.
that. And
Well
you're right.
said.
It wasn't a smooth. There's still ups and downs, but I think what it did create is it created this sense of I'm not alone. It created this sense of comfort, right? And for me, in believing in who Jesus is and the Bible, and to anybody that believes in whatever you believe in, but for me, in the Bible, it says, if you believe, and God will give you peace that surpasses all understanding. And to me, like,
Amen.
peace, peace can look different, right? It doesn't mean you can have peace in trials and tribulations. It's just this sense of comfort. It's a sense of joy, even in the midst of your struggles. But I think that's ultimately what I wanted, and what we all want. If we can just have this
Yeah.
peace, joy through our ups and downs, that's all we can ask. Because we're in a fallen world, boys. Like, we're in a world that there's gonna be things that we're all wrestling with. There's gonna be negative things. People are gonna hurt us. There's just things are gonna happen in life. So, but when we submit to something bigger than ourselves, we
Yeah.
know we'll get this peace, and that we know there'll be comfort in situations where it may not feel very comforting. So that was definitely something that I think changed my life. And I'll wrap these two up real quick, but I think
Oh man, take your time, man. Go
the
ahead.
second the
we got
second
time.
one the second one I lost my sister in 2019.
I'm sorry to
Um,
hear that.
and
Sorry, man.
and that's tough. And why is that tough? As a kid, I was how old was I? 15, almost 16 at the time. And what people don't understand, well, I'm sure you guys understand this. When you're like a kid, everything's butterflies and rainbows. Like you hear of death, you hear of tragedy, but it's like old people. Your great grandparents,
Right, later in life.
or other families. You're just thinking, oh, it can't happen to you, or oh, it's just whatever, and or it's like, oh, that's the way life is. You're 80, you're supposed to die. All these things, right? But when it happens to you, especially to a sibling at
Yeah,
an age of the age she was older than me, but she was about 19, I believe, 19 or 20. But it rocks your world. It rocks your world, and you're like, what do you do from here? Like, well, what do you
Life
do?
kind of stops. Life kind of
Life
stops.
stops, and for me, it completely changed my life because my sister wrestled with mental health. And a lot of people in my family do. I'm very blessed and fortunate where it's not as serious as others. But I'm not saying it's perfect. I'll never claim that either. Um, but this is another topic I'll say. Something that I wrestled with too, because I saw one extreme end of the spectrum, I diminished the way I felt too, because I knew I didn't have it the way
got
my sister and my mom and
we
stuff
see
had
that
it.
a lot.
So I'll talk about that in a little bit here, because I was like, wait a minute, I don't have that. But as I've gotten older, I was like, wait, I do in some areas, but it's less severe. But it doesn't make it like I don't have to ignore it because I know people have it worse. If that makes sense. So I'll talk
It
about that
does.
in a second.
Yeah,
But basically, yeah, I realized that there's something bigger at play. Like, I want to help people not feel this way. I'm a very I'll be honest, and I don't mean this boastful, but I'm a very genuinely just happy person. I'm
Yeah.
just genuinely,
yeah,
I wake up and just am happy and positive and am excited to take the day on. And from that day, my mission was like, I want other people to try to have that hope and
Yeah.
have that happiness and joy that I have. And I'm not saying I have everything figured out, but from that moment on, I knew it was bigger than myself again, because I wanted people not to have to feel that way. And
Yeah.
I'm hoping that people can feel the way I feel, and we can all come together and experience this together the way that I feel like I feel every day,
yeah,
and I'm not saying, like, well, I want to say every day, but majority of the days, right? And so that was a keep going moment for me. I realized I was like, okay, I got sucker punched a little bit there, but what
yeah.
can I do from this moment on to make it better for the people around me, the people I love, and this
Strong.
world, right?
Strong.
So that was a keep going moment. And then Look at that. Oh, Alexa, stop. My goodness. It's my alarm. Hey, that's how I'm dedicated to y'all boys. My alarm's on right now. I've been up
Yeah,
about 2 hours.
I say.
But anyways, my last keep going moment, and this one I'd say would affect um right along with my sister passing, but maybe equally as affected to my mental health. This one. So, um, when I told you all about my career in coaching, I didn't get into this part. A lot of people, I wanted to coach so bad. I wanted it so bad. I worked everything I did to prove people wrong that I could do it. I realized some of the reason I did what I did was because when I was coaching, people saw me as a coach, not a person in a wheelchair. And so that fueled me to want to coach.
Yeah.
And so what I realized is I pursued it so hard that I sacrificed everything else in my life. See, when I live here, I grew up here in Henderson, Nevada, where I'm at now. I had a family. I mean, I had my family here. I had my church family here. I was at school. I had friends. I had a whole bunch of life. Like I had like my life was here. But in my mind, I was like, oh, I want to coach so bad. I'm gonna leave. What I didn't realize is everything I was sacrificing. People don't realize when you coach college baseball, you're not just putting
Different.
out the lineup card and playing a couple games a week and a couple practices, and then you're going out and chilling with the homies after. No, you're going 60 to 100 hours a week for 10, 11 months. I was a recruiting coordinator. I watched 130 plus games every summer.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just, rec league and exciting. And I know to all the listeners here, um, I realized I inadvertently isolated myself. I didn't know, I didn't realize it. And I said I was a social person. But because I lived in where I was at, I wasn't really able to hang out with people at the college because I didn't want to ruin that coach to college relationship to the guys. So I couldn't really hang out with people there. I was in a super small town. All the people I coached with were older than me. Yeah, we were cool, but sometimes it's just not the same when you're talking
No.
outside of
Absolutely.
baseball, right? I I lived in the middle of nowhere in Ohio. My church that I ended up finding like the last couple months I was there, 45 minutes to an hour away anywhere I went. So I just couldn't do the things I could or that I could here in Vegas. So what
Yep.
I realized is I inadvertently isolated myself, and I was at a bad place mentally. When I was at baseball, I was so excited, I was so happy. But then the other like 8 hours of my day, I was like, "What am I doing?"
You
Yeah.
felt like a You felt like a stranger to yourself.
Oh, a stranger, dude. I was like, well, what? Why? What am I doing? I'd call my friends and be like, hey, what's up? And they're like, oh, I'm doing this. I get to go there. I'm like, sick. I get to go to this Christian concert. I get to do. And I'm like, what? And and I realized, and there's one thing, man. The biggest thing I learned in that life, or in that part of my life, is I know this is not a religious podcast, y'all, but this is who I am. My faith is
You
who
gotta
I
speak your truth, man. Speak
am.
your
And God told me, He said, if you can be content with just me and you can be content in any season of your life. And that changed my life. Why does it change my life? It's because every day after that, I've read the Bible since. And this was over a year and a half ago. And it everything else clicked. Like, because I realized I didn't need people around me to have this peace. I needed something bigger than myself. I needed to believe in something higher than myself, and for me that was Jesus. And I needed that relationship with Him because every one of us had a void in our life, in our hearts, and it's bigger than ourselves and bigger than what people in this world can offer you. Now,
Yep.
whatever you believe in, that's up to you. But for me, like I said, it's from Jesus, and so that filled that void. And from that moment on, I had that relationship with Him, and other things started to reveal. I started praying. I said, God, bring people in my life that all I prayed for a long time is I said, God, I want someone who loves sports, loves Jesus, that still is a guy. Like, we still joke around, we're still cool. No offense, but I didn't like not a square, right? Like, I wanted someone who's still like, you know what I mean? Like, still goofy and but love Jesus because that's who I am, and love sports. And so I prayed about it, and it was right after this is right before I met Ad, and I met my best friend now, Joe Singley. Joe Singley's my brother in Christ, catching assistant catching coach with the Reds.
Yep.
Con. I love the guy to death. But I prayed so hard for that, and he knows this, and it might sound corny, but I had no one. I was in this transformative phase of my life where I was trying to give my life even more to Jesus and get closer to my faith and who I was. But then again, I didn't have anybody. I didn't
Let
have
me take this a step further.
oh,
You had to have someone believe in you, but you need to believe in yourself as well.
Yeah.
exactly,
That's
exactly.
just kind of the TB and J kind of the
Yeah,
sandwich here. Like that's just it goes both ways.
it does. It
You
does.
felt like you weren't being yourself. Once again, you have someone that comes in your life and you start to find things out about yourself again that you forgot. That's for sure.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And I realized I found my identity within
Yeah.
my sport,
How
within
beautiful is
my
that?
coaching.
Yeah.
And I know Dom said this too. It's like when people aren't being successful, it's typically not because of their mechanics. It's typically not. It's because it's the purpose, it's the meaning, it's the why. That's why people are wrestling, right? In these
Yeah.
things, right? So for me, when I was struggling, it wasn't necessarily because I wasn't feeling great physically, or it was the mental aspect of the what's the meaning behind this? What's the purpose? I got so caught up in what I thought I wanted in the world that I lost who I was.
Right.
And
Right.
and I think that was my keep going moment is when I submitted that was like, okay, I'm gonna fully dive in to be a better version of myself and learn about who Jesus says I am. And then I know when I get to that point in peace, these things will come, right? These things.
That's it. I think that was one of my favorite things I've heard on this podcast because not only does it go par for the course with you being authentic and organic and talking about your testimony and your story, but there's so much strength and understanding that you can take back your identity at any time.
Yep.
In our situation with this podcast, as players and coaches, people that stay involved with sports, we get so wrapped up in this sometimes that it becomes our worth gets wrapped up in wins and losses. Our worth gets wrapped up in even the impact. Like I don't think I impacted this guy as much as I should have today. I failed him.
Mhm.
I think it's refreshing to hear you saying that things got better when you started opening up about this, when you
Yep.
started bringing people in that cared about you and mattered to you, and
Yep.
then understand that we do fail every single day, but it doesn't make us a failure. Luke, what do you got?
Yeah, man. Pat, you say this all the time, but I just got caught listening there at the end.
Yeah,
How powerful Dan's story is, and I hope our listeners get caught listening to this whole thing because man, that's 42 minutes of gold right there, and they can learn so much from your trials and tribulations and how you've approached every day with your effort and your attitude. So thank you
amen.
so much for sharing that
I
with
Dan,
agree.
I agree. I
listeners.
agree. Luke, I want to wrap us up. We'll do the old usual here, rapid fire. Luke, question wise, go ahead. You start us off.
Who's your favorite? Who's your favorite ball player? Baseball
Baseball
player.
player.
He would steal my question too. I should have went first. Go
Jose
ahead.
Jose Trevino. That's my boy.
Jose Trevino.
Yeah.
You want to hear something crazy? And I might have told you this, Dan, prior, where I work at Athletes HQ, the head of Athletes HQ, shout out my guy, Joe Filomeno. Joe Filomeno was a pitcher at Louisville. He got drafted in the 20 something round to the Rangers. Jose Trevino was his personal catcher.
That's
No
cool.
way.
Yes. So the
That's
fact that
awesome.
like Jose is still kicking, having a great career, that's awesome. And then shout out my guy Joe. I'm heading to the HQ. I'll be back, baby. I'll be back
Yeah.
at the HQ later on today. All right. First one, that's good. Second thing, if you are in an airport right now and you need a snack going into your flight, what are you going for?
Nerd clusters.
Oh,
Dude,
oh,
picked him up the
oh.
other day for our bus trip.
Yep.
Dude, one of my buddies had them last night at the pregame. I'm like, they brought the clusters out.
Yeah.
That's elite. That's
Yeah.
elite. All right, Luke, what do you got?
Spencer Ann made a candy salad for the new apartment. That was the main ingredient. I'm just saying.
Electric. You should keep her around, Lou. You should keep her around. Uh,
Let's see here. Favorite team in baseball. It could be minor league, pros, college. It can't be Wilmington though. It can't be
Yeah,
Wilmington.
it's a great question. I don't know. I don't really. I wouldn't say I'm a really. I like the Red Sox. I was born back east in Rhode Island. But I don't really keep up with a specific team. As I started coaching, I was not more attached to players.
Yeah.
I started like to watch their careers. So I mean, yeah. I mean that's about it.
I know sports nuts. I know all the sports nuts never have like a favorite team because they're
Yeah,
all so over the board.
for sure, for sure.
No,
It's
I
tough.
agree. I agree. Last question for you, and this is one where I had to ask you based on the hat and based on your faith. Favorite Bible quote of all time for our listeners?
Um, man, there's two that come to mind. So I'd say John 9 verse 3. Let's give context is when Jesus heals the blind man, and they ask Jesus. They say, Jesus, why was this man born blind? Was it because of his sins? Was it because of the family sins that he committed? He said, no. It's so that people can see the power of me, meaning Jesus, through him being disabled. And why do I think that's so powerful, and why I think that resonates with me is it reminds me that there's a purpose between in every situation.
Yep.
And when you are, in a circumstance that you may not know the reasoning, there is a bigger reasoning for that. And I
Yeah.
think that Bible verse encapsulates that for me.
Love
Because
it.
because the guy is disabled, right? He's blind. And they ask, like, because there are people out there that might think like, was this a consequence to my action? Or did I do something wrong, or did my family do something wrong for me to have to suffer? And it's like, no, in the Bible it tells us that it's so God can get the glory through your situation. Meaning that it's gonna work out. He's gonna make it clear. So
Yeah.
that to me would be John 9 chapter 3.
Love
Nice.
it, man. Yeah, God said there wouldn't be, God never said there wouldn't be storms, man.
Yeah, exactly.
He just
Exactly.
said he'd walk you through it. That's all.
Amen.
Yeah.
One
Amen.
thousand percent.
We can't cap it off any better than that. Dan, I know we got things in the works. I usually ask how we can help you. I know how we're going to help each other, so I'm not even going to ask that. I know we're going to be rocking, especially with your new things that we'll have you back on and talk about the new Dan McCarty in a couple years from now.
Dude,
Oh,
it's
absolutely.
it's hey, be on the lookout, everybody that's listening. I want to support every single one of these listeners as best I can. I'm all about giving back. And I love helping people. That's where I find my fulfillment. Ultimately through Jesus, but I love helping people, right? And like giving back to this community. I love every one of y'all. To the host, every listener. I don't know y'all, but I want to get to know you guys. So any way I can help when I do start creating these things, I'd love to share it with you all.
Amazing.
Yeah, in complete Dan McCarty fashion, how can I help the people that he hasn't even met yet? It doesn't surprise me one bit, man. Doesn't surprise me one bit. All right, guys. Well, I'm gonna jump on this flight. I'm gonna have to ransack the cafe for some nerd clusters. I'll keep you guys posted. But above all else, love you guys. Keep going.
Keep going, y'all. Appreciate y'all.
Keep
Later,
going.
guys.